Today I want to talk about Mary Little. Mary Little was 25 years old the day she disappeared from the Lenox Square shopping center in Atlanta, Georgia. On October 14th, 1965, Mary went to the Lenox Square shopping center to meet a friend to do some window shopping and have dinner. Well, at about 8 p.m., after dinner was over, they said goodbye to one another. The coworker went her way, and Mary went her separate way. The next morning, Mary didn't show up for work, and this caused her boss to be concerned. So his course of action was to call her landlord and say, "Hey, have you seen Mary?" Well, the landlord decided to go into her apartment. Whenever he went into the apartment, he said that the apartment was empty. Mary didn't look like she had been there. So this prompted the boss to then go to the coworker that had seen Mary last, and he was like, "Hey, where's Mary? She didn't show up for work this morning." So the coworker said, "Well, we said goodbye last night, and she went her separate way, and I went my separate way, and that's the last I saw Mary." Now, instead of doing the normal thing and maybe just waiting it out, or I don't know, contacting the police, he calls the security guards at the shopping center at the time and asked them to check the lot for Mary's car. So the security guards allegedly went out and looked for the car, didn't see the car, rang the boss back and was like, "Hey, we don't see the car here." Now, super duper worried, the boss, instead of calling the police again, went to the parking lot at about noon and found the car exactly where Mary's coworker said it would be. Even though the security team went out there, allegedly, looked around and said, "Hey, we don't see the car," he happened to show up and see the car exactly where it was supposed to be. Now, at the time, the security detail for the Lenox Square Shopping Center would keep a log of the cars that had been left there overnight so that they could issue citations to the vehicles left in the car park overnight. I don't know how this information was let loose, but the car that Mary was driving was not in the car log as being left in the lot overnight. I don't know how this information was obtained because the police never obtained that information. They never subpoenaed the call logs or car logs or anything like that. Now, the Lenox Square Shopping Center is enormous. You can see here that it's pretty extensive, and the parking in the area is really extensive. So it's organized by like color and number. So you have your like red section, your green section, your yellow section, and each of those sections have numbers in it, and that's how they would keep the logs. So once the car is finally located by the boss, the police were called, and they arrive and they examine the car and find the exterior of Mary's car was coated in a dust of red clay. Now, here in the South, for all the way from North Carolina to Georgia, I think some parts of Alabama too, instead of the dirt in some places being like brown, it's like this reddish, orangey, thick, clay like almost. The contents of Mary's vehicle is as follows. It contained 4 bags of groceries that was purchased the night before, a couple of soda bottles, a package of Kent cigarettes, which is the kind of cigarettes that Mary smoked. Neatly folded in the middle of the bucket seats was a slip that Mary wore under her dress, undoubtedly, a pair of underwear, a girdle, a bra, and a single stocking that appeared to have been cut with a knife, possibly. None of Mary's outer clothing, jewelry, her handbag, or her car keys have ever been found or located. Now, blood was found on the clothing in the car, near the driver's side door handle, and on the back passenger window, and also on the steering wheel. And I believe there was a fingerprint found in the blood on the steering wheel. After processing, the blood type that was found to be was type O blood, which was Mary's blood type. The responding officers who initially took note of the vehicle and the contents and everything said that they thought that the blood in the car was staged, that had been put there after the fact, that it didn't look like any blood from a struggle or of any sort. Now enters Ron Little, Mary's husband, who she had just married 6 weeks prior to her disappearance. He's been out of town on some sort of business trip. First, he's like super annoyed with this whole situation. This is a total inconvenience for him, and he's just really concerned about when he's going to get his car back from being processed. I'm laughing not because I think it's funny, because I think of like the ridiculousness of the fact that you just learned that your wife is missing. Her car has been found, and it has blood inside of it, and her underclothes are inside of it, but she's nowhere to be found. And you have the audacity, sir. So after getting his car back, he has noted that there are 40 unaccounted miles on the odometer of Mary's car, because he kept really like tight track of how many miles she put on her car. There are some really interesting details, a part of this case. Like on October 15th, the following day of Mary's disappearance, Mary's credit card was used at a gas station in Charlotte, North Carolina. Charlotte, North Carolina is about 3.5 hours from Atlanta. Then 12 hours later, after the first use of the credit card, that same credit card was used at another gas station, this time in Raleigh, North Carolina. Now, Raleigh, North Carolina is about 2.5 hours from Charlotte, North Carolina. So we have the 40 miles that are unaccounted for on the car, which is 20 miles out, 20 miles back. So a radius. So they drove around about 20 miles out and drove 20 miles back from the Lenox Square Shopping Center. Then we have Mary's credit card being used at these gas stations, that are about 3.5 hours respectively, and then 2.5 hours away from the 3.5 hour location there in North Carolina. Both slips from both stations were signed by a Mrs. Roy H. Little Jr., and it appeared that it was in Mary's handwriting. The attendants at the gas station reported that there was a woman with a minor head injury who was accompanied by one or two unshaven middle aged men who appeared to be coaching her, commanding her, telling her to do these things. And they also noted that the woman attempted to hide her face from the attendants, and she didn't try to ask for help or anything. So they were like, okay, sure. A woman here covered in blood with two dudes that are telling her what to do. This is fine. This is okay. This is perfectly fine. I'm gonna stay out of this. Okay. Now, back then, whenever you used a credit card, they had these things called charge slips, and they would write the license plate number on the car that pulled into the station on the charge slip as well, to corroborate things, to make sure payment was made. And the license plate number that was written on these charge slips happened to be from a license plate, that was stolen in North Carolina prior, or the few days prior to Mary's disappearance. Charlotte, North Carolina also happened to be Mary's hometown. During police interviews, Mary's friends had some really weird things to say. One of her friends was like, Mary just used to like stay out all night. And that was like her roommate too. And which is a weird thing. I mean, she just got married 6 weeks ago. I don't know if she was living with Roy, if she was still in this roommate situation, but that's weird. But I mean, she was clearly in a relationship with a man. She was staying out all night because, but I guess it was 1965 and everybody was still a virgin back then, according to everybody else. I have no idea. Really weird information to give the police, though, as far as I'm concerned. Like, yeah, she stays out all night. Of course she does. She's in a relationship with somebody. Anyway, that was weird to me. 3 days after Mary disappears, Roy, Mary's husband, gets a phone call by someone calling themselves Calvin Allen. Now, Calvin Allen told Roy, in typical Southern fashion, that he was praying for him and expressed his sympathies. Now, this is weird because, as far as everybody knows, like Mary's simply missing. She's not dead. But this Calvin Allen is like, I am so sorry for everything that's going on with you, Roy, and I am so sorry for your loss. Now, according to Roy, he had no idea who this person was, never heard of him, had never spoken to him. But also, in the meantime, old Roy was out here buying season tickets, two season tickets actually, to the Falcons' upcoming 1966 season. And he also contacted Rich's department store, where Mary happened to make purchases on charge, and informed them that he would not be held responsible for paying the charges that his wife had made. Roy also alleges he received a ransom call for $20,000 once the news of the credit card slips had been made public. The FBI believes that call was a hoax. Now, I'm running out a little bit of time here, so I'm going to make a quick part two, so stay tuned for that. It's not going to take long.